My fiancée texted me at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. I met someone else. Don't make this difficult. I stared at it long enough for the screen to dim, typed one word, and hit send. Finally, then I spent the rest of my lunch break turning off the parts of her life she'd been living through me. I'm 36. I work in financial operations for a mid-sized investment firm. I'm either engaged or was engaged, depending on how literal you want to be. We were together 4 years, engaged for 8 months, wedding scheduled for early June. Venue booked, deposits paid, guest list mostly done. From the outside, we looked like one of those couples people point to as solid. Inside, it was more like a carefully managed mess that I kept mistaking for confidence. Her name is Tessa. She's smart, magnetic in a room, and sharp in the way a blade is sharp. Useful if you respect it, dangerous if you don't. When we first started dating, her directness felt refreshing. She said what she meant. She didn't play games. I told myself I liked that. Over time, I realized she did play games. She just called them honesty. It started small, like most things do when you're trying to be reasonable. Little digs disguised as jokes. Comments about how my job was safe and predictable, with the implication that predictable meant unimpressive. How her friends' partners were more exciting. How I should be grateful she chose me, because she could have dated anyone. I laughed it off more often than I should have. I wasn't intimidated by her, exactly. I just didn't want to turn every comment into a debate. I believed in choosing your battles. I thought relationships were mostly compromise. We moved in together in Raleigh, North Carolina, after 2 years. She was freelancing, branding, social media strategy, whatever paid that month. I covered most of the fixed expenses: rent, utilities, insurance, groceries, and the boring monthly stuff that keeps life stable. She contributed when her income was good, and when it wasn't, she'd say things like, "It's temporary," or "Once we're married, it won't matter." I didn't love the arrangement, but I accepted it because it had a narrative attached to it. The narrative was we're building. Or at least I was. Looking back, I can see there were warning signs I actively filed away as not a big deal. The way she'd use my card without asking because it was easier. The way she'd make plans and assume I'd pay because you're better at money. The way any conversation about fairness ended with her turning it into a character flaw in me. Controlling, insecure, obsessive, anxious. The biggest pattern was the way she spoke about responsibility as if it were a trait other people had, like I color. She didn't see it as something you do. She saw it as something that shows up when convenient. We got engaged last fall. The proposal was expensive and cinematic, and I'll own my part in that. I did it because I thought it would make her happy and because I wanted the engagement to feel like a reset. Like we were moving into a more serious chapter where she'd soften a little, where we would become real. For a month or two, she seemed energized by the engagement. She posted photos. She planned. She talked about the wedding in the future tense like it was already done. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe she just needed security. What I didn't notice at the time was what she wasn't doing. She wasn't taking on more responsibility. She wasn't contributing more. She wasn't meeting me halfway. She was consuming the stability and calling it love. Then, last week, she sent that text. No warning conversation. No face-to-face. No, we need to talk. Just a statement delivered like she was canceling a subscription. I met someone else. Don't make this difficult. The betrayal wasn't the most shocking part. In hindsight, there were signs. New secrecy with her phone. More nights, working late, at a coffee shop. A sudden obsession with looking effortless. New clothes, new routines, a kind of performative glow that wasn't for me. What shocked me was her tone. Casual. Almost smug. Like she expected the classic reaction. Panic, tears, bargaining, questions, anger. Like she expected me to collapse into the role I'd already been playing. Provider, fixer, stabilizer. Even while she tried on a new life. I didn't give her any of that. I replied with one word. Finally. And then I went quiet. Not the petty silent treatment. Not the passive-aggressive one. The kind of quiet you get when a decision has already been made and you're just executing it. I opened my banking app and treated my own life like a checklist. First, the joint checking account. It wasn't truly joint in the romantic sense. We both had access, but I funded it. My paycheck went in. The bills came out. It existed because it made payments simple. That day, I rerouted my direct deposit back to an account only I controlled. Then I moved my money out, down to the exact amount that was mine. I left enough to cover any charges already pending because I'm not reckless. I'm precise. I'm not interested in overdraft drama or some made-up narrative about financial abuse. I wanted everything clean. Then the subscriptions, streaming accounts, music, cloud storage, the meal delivery service she loved. I didn't cancel them in a rage. I didn't even think about it emotionally. I just turned them off. Click. Done. Next was the phone plan. The account was in my name. I'd added her line because it was cheaper together and because we were a team. I separated the lines. I transferred my number to a plan only I owned and removed hers. Her phone stayed active for a few hours before service died. I imagine she found out mid-scroll. Gym membership, mine. She was an additional member. Removed. The membership didn't freeze. It ended. If she wanted to sign up again, she could. Like an adult. Car insurance, my policy. She was listed. Removed. Roadside assistance, removed. The emergency credit card I paid off every month. Locked, replaced, then canceled. Anything tied to my identity, passwords, recovery emails, bank portals, utility logins, changed. I didn't lock her out of the apartment. I could have, maybe, but that's how you invite legal noise. Also, I didn't want a screaming match. I didn't want to watch her perform outrage and call it pain. I packed a bag, took my laptop and documents, and went to stay with a friend across town while I figured out the next step. That night she texted again. The tone had changed, like someone realizing the floor isn't actually solid. Why isn't my phone working? My grocery order got declined. This is immature. This is petty. I didn't respond. The next morning came the escalation. Calls from unknown numbers, emails about how I was overreacting, messages swinging between insults and attempts at charm. At one point she wrote, "Couples get through worse." Like cheating was weather. Still, nothing from me. On the third day, I started getting calls from a local number I didn't recognize. The voicemails were professional, careful, and oddly urgent. "Hello, this is Mr. Dalton. I'm calling regarding a time-sensitive matter involving shared financial arrangements. Please call me back as soon as possible." That's when I realized she'd switched strategies. She got a lawyer. I called back once because I wanted to know what kind of game this was. I didn't speak emotionally. I spoke like I speak at work. He picked up immediately. His tone was polished in a way that told me he'd heard one story, filtered and framed. He said he represented Tessa in a domestic financial dispute and wanted to discuss shared assets and my abrupt withdrawal of support. Those words mattered. Shared assets. Support. Those aren't neutral words. Those are words used to make something sound like it has legal weight even when it doesn't. I told him the truth in short sentences. We were not married. There was no joint lease. There was no prenup. There was no written agreement promising ongoing support. Every account I turned off was in my name, funded by me. Then I asked him directly what legal basis he believed he had for contacting me. There was a pause. Not dramatic. Calculating. He asked if I'd be willing to meet to resolve things amicably. I said no. Writing only. He said his client felt blindsided and destabilized. I said his client sent a text ending our engagement and announcing a new relationship without discussion. I said my response was to disengage financially and personally. I asked again where the legal issue was. He didn't answer. Not really. That afternoon, Tessa emailed me, a long one. No insults this time. No smugness. Just a rewrite. She said she never meant it that way. She said she was emotional. She said I knew she didn't mean deal with it literally. She said she assumed we'd talk. She said my reaction was extreme and vindictive. Then came the list. Rent. Utilities. Phone. Groceries. Therapy. She used a phrase that made my jaw go still. Transitional support. That was the moment everything inside me clicked into place so cleanly it felt almost calming. This wasn't heartbreak. This was entitlement. She didn't miss me. She missed the infrastructure. I replied once, briefly. The engagement is over. There will be no further financial support. All communication goes through your attorney. Then I blocked her number again. Within an hour, the lawyer called back. His tone was different now. Careful instead of confident, like someone who had opened a file and realized it wasn't the case he thought it was. I didn't take the call. I told him to email. He did. The email was shorter than her last one. No demands this time, just questions. Who is on the lease? Are there any shared accounts? Did I ever promise ongoing support in writing? Were any wedding expenses refundable? That shift told me everything. He'd looked at the situation and realized there was no leverage. Just noise. Around the same time, she tried to reach me through social media using a friend's account. I blocked that too, but not before she slipped one message through. You're trying to ruin my life. I didn't respond, but I took screenshots. I've learned that when someone starts rewriting reality, you document quietly. That evening, I went back to the apartment while she was out and took only what was mine: clothes, electronics, personal documents. I photographed every room before I left. Clean, undamaged, nothing missing that wasn't mine. Then I left my key on the counter and walked out. The next morning, her lawyer emailed again. This time, he said his client wanted to explore mediation rather than escalation. I actually laughed. Not out loud at first, just a short breath of disbelief. There was nothing to mediate. No shared future. No shared assets. No marriage. No children. No contract. She ended it with a text and expected a soft landing. I replied in writing. The engagement was terminated by your client's message. No marriage occurred. No joint assets exist. I will not participate in mediation. Further contact should be limited to written communication regarding retrieval of personal property, if needed. 2 hours later, she sent one final email from her own account before I blocked that too. Long, bitter, accusing. She called me heartless. She said the new guy would never treat her like this. She said she expected better from someone who claimed to love her. What she didn't seem to understand was that the moment she texted me, I found someone else. She voluntarily stepped out of the category of my responsibility. The first bill she truly noticed was the rent reminder. Not an eviction notice. Just an automated email asking for payment confirmation. She forwarded it to me with one line. This is due tomorrow. What are you doing? I did nothing. The second hit was her car. She called a mutual friend in a panic because the insurance app wouldn't load and roadside assistance said she wasn't covered. Apparently, she had assumed coverage existed like air, like gravity, like it was something the world provided because she was in it. By the end of that day, her anger shifted into fear. She emailed her lawyer asking what her options were. His response was clinical. He asked for documents she didn't have. Lease agreements, shared account statements, written promises. There weren't any. The someone else disappeared quietly. I only know because she accused me of poisoning him against her in one of the last messages that reached me before I blocked everything. I had never spoken to him. He just met the version of her that didn't have a financial safety net and decided it wasn't his job to be one. Her lawyer tried once more, asking if I would consider temporary assistance to avoid hardship. I replied with a single sentence. There is no legal or moral obligation for continued support after termination initiated by your client. That was the end of the calls. A week later, I heard through someone else that she was moving out. Not upgrading, downsizing, staying with a friend while she figured things out. Selling items she used to mock me for being careful about money over. The irony wasn't delicious. It was just accurate. I officially canceled the wedding that same afternoon. I lost deposits. I took the hit. Clean break. Worth every dollar. I didn't feel victorious. I felt calm. The kind of calm you get when you stop arguing with reality and start aligning with it. Then she tried public pressure. Messages started coming in from people I barely spoke to. A cousin of hers, an old coworker, a mutual friend who suddenly wanted to hear both sides. That phrase is never neutral. It means someone has already been fed a version that needs reinforcement. She posted vague things online about abandonment. Quotes about men who can't handle honesty. Stories about rebuilding after emotional abuse. No names, just enough for people to connect dots. I didn't react. I didn't defend myself. I didn't comment. Silence does more damage to that strategy than any argument ever could. Then she escalated one more time in a different direction. She emailed my parents. Not to insult me, not to accuse, to appeal. She wrote about how much she loved me, how confused she was, how she never meant for things to end like this, how she hoped they could talk sense into me. My mother forwarded it to me with one line. Are you okay? I told her yes, explained everything plainly, facts only. She replied that she was proud of me for staying steady, and that my father would have said the same thing if he were alive. That door closed quietly. The last attempt was a letter drafted by her lawyer. It sounded legal without making actual claims, heavy on feelings, light on facts. It implied expectations. It mentioned reliance. It asked again for discussion. I didn't respond. 2 days later, the lawyer sent one final email. Short, neutral. His client would not be pursuing the matter further. Could we coordinate a time for her to retrieve items, if any remained? That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just retreat. And then the noise stopped. No more posts. No more messages. No more calls from unfamiliar numbers. The silence felt different than before. Not tense, final. Once everything went quiet, I noticed how quiet my own head felt too. Not empty. Organized. Like a room after you finally throw out the things you kept tripping over. The first change was practical. My expenses dropped immediately. Not because I suddenly became frugal, because I wasn't quietly funding another adult's comfort anymore. My account stabilized in a way I hadn't realized was missing. The second change was emotional, and it wasn't dramatic. I didn't spiral. I didn't beg. I didn't even miss her in the way people assume you will. What I missed was the idea of the future I'd been paying for. Once that future was gone, there was nothing left to negotiate with. The relationship had been two things: my effort and her assumption that my effort was permanent. I replayed her text more than anything else. Not with rage, clarity. She didn't send that message impulsively. She sent it with confidence. She believed she had leverage. She believed I'd absorb the shock, keep the lights on, and wait quietly while she explored other options. She believed that if she left, the benefits would stay. When that assumption failed, her entire strategy collapsed. First anger, then blame, then a lawyer, then public narrative, then pleading, then silence. That taught me something about myself too. I'm not reactive. I'm responsive. When something breaks trust at a structural level, I don't argue with it. I remove myself from the load-bearing position and let the structure stand or fall on its own. She called me cold. I'm fine with that. Cold implies distance. What I felt was alignment. I moved into a smaller place closer to work. Quiet. Mine. No shared passwords. No, why did you change this? No constant background sense that I was being evaluated. I started sleeping better. About 10 days after everything went quiet, she tried one last move I didn't expect. She showed up. I was getting home from work when I saw a car parked a little down the block. Not her car. A borrowed one. She got out when she saw me, like she'd been waiting. Like she'd timed it. Like coincidence was a costume she could put on. She looked smaller. Not physically. Energetically. The sharpness was gone. Replaced with urgency. She started talking before I could say anything. She wanted 5 minutes. She said she deserved at least that. I said no. That surprised her more than anything so far. She laughed once like I was joking, then got frustrated. She said I was being cruel. She said we were engaged, and that meant something. She said I owed her a conversation. I told her the conversation ended when she sent the text. She pivoted fast. Said she'd been angry. Said she didn't expect me to actually walk away. Said finally with sarcasm. Said she assumed I'd calm down and we'd talk it out. That line, "I didn't think you'd actually leave," was the most honest thing she'd said in weeks. Then she tried softening. The other guy was a mistake. She realized what she lost. We could start over slowly. No pressure. Just talk. I told her I wasn't angry, and that was why the answer was no. Trust doesn't reset because circumstances change. I told her I wasn't available for reinterpretations of reality anymore. Consequences weren't punishment. They were alignment. She called me heartless again. I walked past her and went inside. I didn't slam the door. I didn't look back. Later that night, a new number texted me. "I never thought you'd actually leave." I didn't reply, because that was the point. Watching someone collide with the outcome of their own assumptions is strange when you're no longer emotionally invested. It becomes observational instead of painful. She assumed stability without commitment, support without accountability, presence without respect. When those vanished, she called it betrayal. I don't hate her. Hate would mean unfinished business. What I feel is distance and a kind of quiet relief I didn't know was possible. I lost money on deposits. I accepted it immediately. Money recovers faster than trust ever does. I consider it tuition, paid early instead of late, weeks instead of years. If you read this and think what I did was harsh, let me be clear. What ended the relationship wasn't my response. It was her certainty that she could discard me without consequence and still keep the benefits. I didn't punish her. I stopped subsidizing disrespect. Love without respect turns into obligation. Obligation without choice turns into resentment. I refuse to live in that middle space again. The aftertaste of this isn't bitterness. It's clarity. When someone tells you how little they value your place in their life, believe them the first time. Then align your actions with reality and step out of the way. That's all I did. And it was enough.